Hi everyone. Today we're going to be cooking a pasta with meat sauce. We have all of our ingredients ready to our right of our cutting board and knife, and we have all our utensils out. Cheese grater, a can opener, a spoon to serve the sauce with, a spatula to stir it while we're cooking, and a spaghetti server. Now we also have our compost bowl and a large bowl with a colander to drain the spaghetti in. Have a hot pad on hand and have two pots out. We're going to be using a pan to cook our sauce in, and we have a large pot that we have water in to cook our spaghetti in. To begin, we're going to turn our big pot of water on. We have to get that to a boil. Turn it on high. Whoops, wrong burner. Turn it on high. And add a generous pinch of salt and a little olive oil. The salt makes the water boil faster, and the olive oil will keep the spaghetti from sticking together. All right, to begin on our meat sauce, we're going to start out sauteing the beef. So we're going to turn, well, before we start cooking, we're going to chop our onions and garlic. So to chop the onion, I'm going to cut off both ends and do a little slice along the side. That cuts through that first layer and makes it easy to peel off. There we go. That goes into the compost bowl. Now we're going to cut the onion from head to toe. Then lay it, we want a flat surface while we're cutting, so we're going to lay it down and cut along the lines. And then in the opposite direction. All right, shove that one to the side with your knife and do the other onion half. Now I like some coarseness in my sauces, a little coarse vegetable texture. So I'm not chopping my onions very finely. I'm allowing them to have some nice bits there. So I'm going to set that to the side. And while that's to the side, I'm going to turn my pan on. Turn it to a nice medium heat, high medium, and we'll let that heat up. And we'll do 1 round of olive oil in the bottom. We'll let that warm up until it's nice and ready for the onions. While we're waiting on that, let's chop up our garlic. So we have several heads of garlic. We're going to start by smashing them. Take the side of your knife, the palm of your hand, don't get your fingers on there, and crush that clove of garlic. It makes it really easy to take the skin off. Now once that skin is off, I have one more clove here. Once that skin is off, we're going to chop them up much like we did the onions, except a little bit more finely. Okay, so I'm going to make nice long strips of garlic. And then I'm going to cut in the opposite direction. Make nice little chunks. Garlic adds so much flavor. When you make any spaghetti sauce, you have to have a bunch of onions and garlic in there. They add that wonderful, wonderful sauce flavor. All right, our pan is heating up. I'm going to spread that oil around. I'm going to turn it up to a nice medium high. Get it going. Now I'm going to add the onions to that. In they go. And they're going to start sizzling and cooking in just a minute here. And while they're starting to cook, we're going to finish doing our chopping. We're going to utilize every little bit of time we have and not just sit and wait. So let's go ahead. The only other thing we have to chop up is our green pepper. We're going to shove our garlic to the side. We're going to cut our pepper from head to toe. Now there's lots of different ways of cutting peppers. This is just my way. I like to cut it so that I don't get any seeds all over everything. So what I'm doing is cutting along the edge of that membrane. And then at the end, I'm just going to cut a little V right here. And I pull it out. And it pops those seeds out without them getting all over the cutting board. Give it a shake into the compost bowl. And I'll do the same thing with the other side. Nice V notch at the end. And pull it out gently by the stem. All right, I hear those onions sizzling. I'm going to give them a stir. Now the key to cooking onions is to not let them brown and to not overcook them so that they're completely mushy. We want to cook them until they're clear, but not so that they're really soft and flavorless. Now I'm cutting up the green pepper into nice long strips. Go from head to toe. And it's not always the easiest vegetable to cut up because it has that round bottom that likes to rock on the cutting board. Just take it slowly. Now I'm going to cut them into small little chunks. That bright green is going to add a lot of wonderful flavor and color to our sauce. And the texture again. These chunks of green pepper will add a nice texture. All right, we've done it to the other half of the green pepper. We're going to chop it into chunks. Okie dokie. Push that one to the side. Now we're going to give our attention to cooking the sauce. Let's stir those onions. Now they're sizzling really nicely. And we're going to add the garlic to them in just a little bit, and then we're going to add the beef. Now, the beef that we're cooking with is a delicious beef. It's an organic beef with a, here we go, with a low ratio of fat to meat. It's a very high quality meat. It's going to add a really good flavor. There's something about adding red meat or any meat to a sauce that adds a lot of flavor. All right, our onions are sauteing nicely. I can tell that they're starting to get a little clear. So now what I'm going to do, they're going to continue cooking as we cook the rest of the vegetables and the meat with them. So I'm going to go ahead and add the garlic now. In goes the garlic. Now we don't want our garlic to cook long, so I'm going to stir it together. And it's going to cook for about 30 seconds while we open our beef packet and add the beef. I'm going to take my knife and I'm just going to cut a slit through the plastic package of the beef. Look at that meat. It's nice and red. And they don't add any coloring. Often at the grocery store, they'll add water and a little red dye to make the meat look bright red. This is natural. There's none of that in this. We're going to take it out of our packet and put it in there. All right, bundle that up and throw it away. And give your hands a wipe. Now we're going to chop up the meat in our pan into chunks. It's going to start cooking right away on that high heat. We'll turn down the heat just a little bit. We're going to start stirring it in with our onions and continue chopping it up. This is where the spatula comes in so handy because that sharp edge cuts that meat up. Wonderful, it's browning. You can smell that wonderful aroma. There's something about cooking meat. If you're a meat eater, there's something about cooking meat that just makes you really hungry. It tastes delicious. Now the wonderful thing about having a beef that doesn't have a lot of fat in it is that you don't have to ever drain any of the fat. The small amount that's in there is actually good for you. It gets digested pretty easily. If you have a lot of fat, that's when it gets to not be very healthy. But this beef has very little fat in it, just enough to help it cook quickly and easily. All right, while that's cooking, we're gonna let it saute there for just a second and stir it. But I'm gonna get my pasta cooking. The water is at a full boil. I'm gonna cut open my packet of pasta and carefully add it to my pot of boiling water. I'm gonna fan it out. And as it starts cooking, I'm gonna push it down into that pot. So let's give the beef a stir. Push that down. Right, keep chopping up that meat. Now if you like larger chunks of meat, you don't have to chop it as finely. It's totally up to you. I love cooking my own marinara sauce, whether it has meat or whatever variant it is, because I can create the own textures and flavors that I love. And as you know, I prefer a little bit of a chunkier, textured sauce. But I don't like having big chunks of meat, so I'm going to chop those up a little more finely. All right, that is cooking beautifully. All right, my pasta is boiling. I'm actually going to turn that down a little bit. Going crazy. I'm going to take my pasta serving spoon and stir it into the water. I'm going to make sure all that spaghetti is covered with water. And stirring it initially will make sure that none of it is stuck together. Nobody likes to have clumps of spaghetti. Turn it down a little bit more. And we're going to let it boil for about 8 minutes. Now the pasta is a whole grain pasta. It has a really nutty flavor. And the extra fiber is really healthy. So when you add this delicious chunky sauce on top of that nutty spaghetti, it's so good. Okay, our beef is cooking nicely. Now it's almost done. So at this point, I'm gonna add those green peppers so that they can saute. In they go. All right, look at that green in there. Isn't that beautiful? Stir those in. The meat looks so yummy. Okay. Now, I'm gonna let those saute for a bit, and I'm gonna open all my tomato cans. So we have tomato sauce, and we have petite diced tomatoes. This is where the texture comes in as well. The chunky bits of diced tomatoes add that real tomato flavor. And the sauce adds a little thickening. Now these tomatoes, the Cento tomatoes, are vine ripened tomatoes. They're at the peak of flavor and ripeness when they're canned. So that's going to make your sauce a brilliant red and have so much flavor. So go ahead and open your tomato cans. Pop the lid out, set it aside. Go ahead and open the rest of them. Here we go. I love fresh tomatoes. Growing up, we canned our own tomatoes, and these Cento tomatoes look so much like them, that bright red. Delicious. I'm going to stir my sauteing peppers and meat. Yummy, that meat looks cooked. The onions are now clear. See, so that sauteing time of the meat and peppers have completely cooked the onions. I'm also going to give my spaghetti a stir. Oh, it's coming along beautifully. Okay, I'll open my final can. Great. There we go. Okay, so the peppers and the meat are sauteing nicely and cooked. I'm going to add the spices now. When you add the spices at that high heat, they blend in, the flavors blend in really quickly. Sprinkle them across. Oh, I can smell the oregano coming out, so yummy. Oh, that's beautiful. Okay. It's perfectly cooked. And I'm going to add the tomato sauces now and let it simmer gently. So in goes one tomato sauce can. Second. And there go the diced tomatoes. That chunky tomato, so yummy. Now this meal is so wonderful because in 30 minutes, I'm going to turn this down. Okay, pay attention, turning it down. Don't want it to be cooking too fast. This is such a good meal because in 30 minutes or less, you can feed your family with a really healthy, delicious homemade sauce. Now, with different skills, it might take a little longer cutting up the vegetables, but everybody will get pretty quick at that after a while. Look at that. See, this is what I love. That chunky, textury tomato sauce. Textury, I don't know if that's a word. It has lots of texture. Look at that. Now the key with the tomato sauce is that you never want it to boil. That makes the tomatoes very acidic. So we want to keep it on low. Now it will come to a simmer. And for a simmer for tomato sauce is when it makes these little bloops. These little boiling bloops. But we don't want it to go more than that. All right. The spaghetti is almost done. We're going to let it cook a couple more minutes. And we're going to keep stirring our sauce. And bring the heat up just a little bit to heat it quickly. All right. Now in the meantime, to make serving go very quickly, we're going to grate up the Parmesan cheese. And with a flavorful sauce like this, you don't need a lot of cheese to add a lot of flavor and just enhance that delicious sauce we made. So we're going to open our package of cheese. Let's see if I can do this. There we go. And we're going to grate it on our fine grater. Now Parmesan is a more crumbly cheese. It's a dry, really flavorful cheese. So take your time grating it. The thing about fresh Parmesan, it's full of flavor. Just need a little bit on top of each serving to add that perfect finish to a dish. All right. Here we go. Now our spaghetti is all done. To drain it, I'm going to bring our colander with our bowl over in front. Make it easy for myself. Grab my hot pad, don't burn yourself. Turn off the spaghetti. And pour it slowly into the colander. Look at that. Beautiful. All right. Give a quick drain here. Let that water come out of it. And pour it back into the pot. Oops. Okay. Set the pasta water aside. We'll drain that later. Let's give our pasta sauce another stir. Give the pasta sauce another stir. Turn up the heat a little bit if you need to. All right, it's nice and hot and ready to serve. Now you can let that pasta sauce simmer for a little while longer if you want. That will blend the flavors even more. So right away, we're going to grab our spaghetti serving utensil. Put a little spaghetti down. That al dente nutty pasta would be so delicious. A little bit more. Everybody likes spaghetti, right? The sauce is bubbling there. Look at that chunky sauce. So delicious. Spread a little bit on top. Or more. And then top it off with just a pinch of Parmesan on top. You ready to dig in? It's delicious. Enjoy.